Welcome everybody to Parkside at Home. My name is Callie.
And I'm Deborah. And if this is your first time joining us, we just want to say thank you so much for being here at our Parkside at Home online space. We would love to get to know you. If you would go to parkside.life/connect, you can fill our online connection card. And I promise you, we're not going to send you 1,000 emails. That's the worst. And even I've learned that even if you unsubscribe from something,
they still send you emails.
It's the worst. Why is that? You would be ashamed of me if you could see my inbox. But we're not going to do that because we don't want to be people who keep adding to your inbox.
Yeah.
We simply want to say hi and get to know you and just make a connection with you. So parkside.life/connect. We would love to say hey.
And one of the things, as just human beings, we all have this desire to feel connected and to have community. And here at Parkside, that is a core value of ours. We are always saying that community is our design, and we love to be together and just be friends with each other and live life together. And we have a few ways that you can experience that as well.
So one of the best ways to do that is to join us here at Parkside Church. We meet at the Sterling Community Center every Sunday at 10:30. And if you're local, we would love to have you. If you're in town visiting, we'd love to have you. We would love to see you. We would love to just say hey in person, share a cup of coffee with you, and how you experience Parkside in person instead of Parkside at home. And so, we would just love to have you join us.
Speaking of all these emails, right now, we are in that weird transition of we just finished Halloween and we're almost at Thanksgiving, but everything is really about Christmas right now. And I know we're a few weeks away and Black Friday shopping is starting now. That's weird.
Which I don't understand because Black Friday is the day after Thanksgiving.
But whatever, it's a problem. But we just want to give you guys the time to go shopping if you need to go shopping and have a date night without your kids and all these things. And so that is why we are doing a parents' night out.
Yeah. So on the evening of December 1st, we are going to have Parents' Night Out. And Callie, can you give us a little more details on that? What's that look like? What does that mean for parents?
So the parents will drop off their kids. You'll bring a sandwich, some little snacks, maybe some goldfish. Everybody loves goldfish. Oh, okay. Well, most everybody likes goldfish. And you'll bring a sandwich, and there will be adult volunteers there to watch your children. If they need to be put down to sleep, because I know small children need to go to bed a lot earlier, we will do that as well. And we will take care of your kids for 2 hours while you have some time with your significant other or just by yourself too, do whatever you need to do. And you will come pick up your child before the night is over. And we'll just hang out with your children and have fun, play games, watch movies, maybe make some popcorn, just have a really great time.
So, Callie, details on time and location for that?
We do not have a location at this moment. We're kind of seeing how many kids we have, but time will be earlier in the evening, probably around 5:30 to about 8. So you have a lot of time to hang out and do what you need to do.
Yeah, so make sure that you check out our online stuff, our announcements and stuff. Will be coming soon about more details about that, so you can have the information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, hello@parkside.life, and we'll be happy to help answer those questions for you.
And we are all done, so we're going to head into the service. We are in our week 3 of Stressed Out, and this has been such a great time to just be really vulnerable with each other about what life is really like and the realness and how life is stressful and how we can deal with that with a relationship with God.
Yeah, it's been good, and I've enjoyed it, and so I'm excited about this week, and we hope that you are too.
Well, good morning, church. We're just going to dive right into the message. And to be honest with you, this is a strange series that we're in. It's strange for a lot of different reasons. For me personally and kind of my own journey with some of the things that we're talking about. We're going to talk a little bit more about that this morning. But it's also really broad and it's just, there's a lot to it. This idea of stressed out. And the title, I don't know, really gives it justice on the breadth of the things that we can and we have been talking about, because it's so much bigger than just being stressed out. It can range from learning how we deal with a really tough day, because we have those from time to time, all the way to living with the reality of depression and anxiety as part of our everyday life. And it seems like that is something that has become more prevalent in the last several years than it has been at other times, and at least in my history. I can't speak for before 1982, and some of you don't even know that was a time because you weren't alive ever. So it's funny also how we talk about it. 20 years ago, like everything was stress. Like everything was stress. It was, I'm just experiencing a lot of stress. I'm stressed out. There's a lot of stress at work and there's a lot of stress at home. Like everything was stress. Like it was this huge umbrella term and concept that kind of everything got lumped in, all the way from like, I had a rough day, I have a lot of pressure on me at work, to things that we now know as anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. It's just funny how like over time things have become more layered and nuanced. And so like I know these conversations are really, really big, but they're really, really necessary. Here's another thing that I really wish we had more time to talk about. And it's also, let me just real quick, give me a little side note, a little insight to like my week in particular. I started writing this message like before we left to go to Indiana. And my goal was to get as much of it done as possible. That way I could spend some time with family, do the things we were there to do, which included officiating a wedding, which was a ton of fun because we didn't die in a tornado, which was a possibility. But I was writing this message, and I, felt like I was hearing from God, and I worked on it some this week, and then I was done with it. I sat in Olive Garden at Cherrydale and finished it while I ate soup, salad, and breadsticks. It was glorious, okay? Got it done, finished. The next day, I went to look over it, and half of it was gone. Like, literally, 800 words of almost 1,700 words gone, and I was angry. But now I'm just like, well, maybe the Lord didn't want me to say some of the things that were in there, and he wanted me to say some of these things. One of the things I wish we had more time to talk about is this concept of like, when we talk about depression and anxiety, it seems like there has been this push over the last few years to even the way that we phrase it differently. And I'm dealing with this too. I'm trying to figure this out. Well, we say things like this: my anxiety causes me to or my depression makes me do this. Like, there's something that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I can't really fully articulate, which means it's dangerous for me to talk about in this setting, but I feel like the Lord's telling me to say, like, look, we don't need to tie anxiety and depression to ourselves. It is not part of our identity. It may be something that you're experiencing, and look, I've had my own struggles with anxiety, and we're going to talk about that here today, but I'm trying to get past the point where I'm not lumping it in with my identity. It is something that happens. It's something that I've gone through. It's very real. It's had an impact on my life, but it is not mine, right? It is not what the Lord intended for me to do in my life. It's not how he intended for me to live. And when I say things like my anxiety, it may be a mental thing that is just for me. But when I get away from that kind of language, that means I know there's light at the end of the tunnel. When I say things like my anxiety, I'm taking full ownership of it like it's always going to be there, right? When I say my daughter, she's my daughter. She came from my DNA, right? She's the fruit of this beautiful marriage I have with my wife. She's mine now and forever. Deborah got really nervous what I was getting ready to say, right? Right? There's love and affection tied into the term of ownership, right? Drew, you got the squeaky chair today. Sorry about that. Yeah. It's great. This has been a day already with the balloons falling from the ceiling like the presence of the Lord, right? The whole video system went down right before service, and Drew got the squeaky chair. But when I say my daughter, or when I say my dog, I know my dog's not going to live forever, but she's my dog. There's affection in that. And I got my wife too, she's included in that too. My dog, my wife, and my daughter. That's all I need in my life. And my mom, I'm good to go, right? But when it comes to my anxiety and my depression, there's something about, I don't want to own it that way. It's something that happens, it's something I experience, but it is not mine, because that is not what God intended for me. And I believe that for you too. That actually has not a lot to do with where we're going today, but I feel pretty strongly about that. So you get that one for free today. But this series is strange because it's so big, it's so nuanced, and it's personal. If you struggle with some version of mental health in your life, you know that it's a lot to talk about. And to give it 3 or 4 weeks really isn't enough. We could talk about this every week of every year, every single Sunday, and we still wouldn't cover everything because it's so much. But it's a conversation that intersects all our lives at some capacity in some way. And we all look at the world and we process things much differently. So that just makes it layered and nuanced. We have different relationships with stress and anxiety. For some of us, it bubbles at the top, right? You can see, like, you know those people in your life. You can see it on their face. They wear it on their sleeves. It's always there. You know how they're feeling, good, bad, and indifferent, because it bubbles at the top. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? There's some of us that things are a little more broody, right? They sit below the surface. They're internal, and you can look at them, and they have this look, and you don't know that, like, they're struggling, that they're having their version of a panic attack, or they're feeling really depressed. Like, it sits below the surface. I'm probably more like that. Like, and I have this look about me where, like, sometimes if I'm concentrated, it looks like I'm mad. Anybody else like this? Like, it's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm just paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm not mad. I'm not upset, but I'm about to be if you keep asking me. We all have these different interactions with anxiety, depression, mental health, but it's all something that we deal with, and that's why we're talking about it. We all deal with it, and we can have this practical, real influence. It does have this practical, real influence in our life, but it also has a spiritual side as well. Now, let me just pause here for a quick second. What I don't want these conversations that we're having over these few weeks to do something that the church has done poorly over the last however long, is we've tried to understand mental health. I don't want you to walk away and feel like if you read more, pray more, talk to people more, like if you just basically do church more, then you shouldn't feel depressed or anxious. That's wrong, okay? Sometimes, and a lot of times, our mental health is affected by all kinds of circumstances, trauma from our past, the stress from our present, and all these other things, right? And sometimes it's the physiological side of our brain, which is all physiological, but that is not working properly, right? And it's not necessarily it can be triggered and be worsened by exigent external circumstances, but sometimes our bodies don't work, including our mind, and like you can't pray your way out of that, right? That's not the answer. Prayer works. Prayer is miraculous. Don't hear me not say that, but like we can't just lean one way or the other, okay? I believe that it's just as miraculous for the Lord to work through doctors' hands and counselors' hands to get you back to a place of mental health, even just as much if he goes, poof, you're healed. I believe that. So don't hear us say that if it's just a spiritual issue. It's not just a spiritual issue. Because believe me, when I dealt with 2 solid years of feeling anxious all the time, like my body was going to quit on me, that I was going to die, literally, that's how I felt for 2 solid years. I prayed. I sought wise counsel. And that's not the healing that came to my life. So don't hear that. But there is a spiritual side to it. 2 weeks ago, Deborah gave one of the most transparent and vulnerable messages I've ever heard in my entire life. It was fantastic. If you weren't here, go back and watch it. It was incredible. And I'm not saying that just because she's my wife and she's my favorite preacher. It was an incredible message about the meaning that we can have in our life as we figure these things out. She leveled the playing field by reminding us how important it is to be open and honest about how we're feeling and the effects that our spirituality and community can have on those seasons of struggle we have. Last week, Jason, one of my best friends for 20 years, and I forgot his name, right? Jason gave us this really practical message. It's like part message, part lecture on brain function, right? And look, I resonate with that because that was the key to help me unlock the things that I was going through, was understanding how my brain functions, right? If you didn't listen to that, go back. Not yet, because I haven't put it up yet, because it was a rough week. Hashtag missing sermon, right? But I'm going to put that up either today or tomorrow. Go back and listen to that. It was just, the parts that I heard were incredible. And he even has pictures. That's great. Pictures and animations just from Jason. But bringing these things together is an important way for us to start this conversation. And as we're looking down the barrel of landing the plane here in a couple weeks, because Advent's coming, crazy, I know, right? I wanted to take a quick second and look at this message from a little bit different perspective. Because if it's true that all of us at some point are intersecting these types of things in our life to some degree in the way that we process things, if that is true, and I believe that it is, that also means like we usually internalize that and say, I will at some point go through these things, right? But I want to flip the perspective out and make it external for this conversation, because if that's true, that means at some point, someone in our life, or really at any given point, someone in our life is experiencing a season of struggle. Think about it right now. Think about the people kind of in your sphere of influence, coworker, a family member, a neighbor, a friend, somebody that you follow on social media, because apparently that's a real thing now, like friendship. Like they're going through a season of struggle. Someone in your life right now at this moment is experiencing, whether they would classify it or call it this, some level of depression and anxiety, stress. And if that's true, like what does that mean for us? Like, let's say we're in a decent or a good place or the best place we've ever been. What does it mean for us to be in relationship with people who are in a season of struggle? How should we interact with them? Because almost every time I've heard these conversations in a church setting or a conference or whatever, it usually gets internalized. There's nothing wrong with that. We've done it for 2 weeks. We're going to do it one more week. But I do think it's important for us to like take a second and say, if we're supposed to serve others, right? If we're supposed to be there for other people as a community, as a family, then wouldn't it be helpful for us to learn how to help people as they're in seasons of struggle? And I think most of us say, like, I feel like I got a good handle on that. Like, I think I know. Well, you don't, so that's why I'm going to help you. But the truth is, like, this is probably one of the most internalized messages I've ever given. Like, as God was revealing truth to me through Scripture, it was like, yeah, you need to work on that. Yeah, you need to work on that. If I don't hear my wife say amen 15 times, then she's not listening because she is going to hear these things. And as God was beginning to speak to me through this, he led me to the book of Philippians, which I feel like we talk about Philippians all the time, especially the first 3 or 4 chapters. But here we are again in the first couple chapters. And Paul's writing this letter to this church that he planted. He got it started. He invested in leaders, and then he kind of went about some of his missionary journeys. And then he wrote a letter back to them. And the letter was really focused on helping them live a life with Jesus as Lord. Like, that was the theme of this letter. It's like, this is how to live your life. Like, Jesus is the most important thing. And it's funny because, like, learning these little tricks of the trade, these little tools and resources, like, even how we interact with other people in their season of struggle, they teach us how to live life as Jesus as Lord. And as we travel through these first couple of chapters, Paul gives us these insights on how we can help other people when they're in a season of struggle. I think it's really cool. I'm very excited about it, so here we go. First of all, in Philippians chapter 1, we're going to look at 3 verses together that are kind of all in the same vein. Paul says in chapter 1, verse 27, it says, whatever happens, if you write in your Bible, if you're that person, that's cool, that's okay. Underline the words, whatever happens. Those are important words. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in one spirit, striving together as you are one in faith of the gospel. So a lot of these conversations that Paul's having, he's talking about unity, but I think there's something important to draw out right at the beginning. When Paul says, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. What in the world does that mean? What is this directive that he's giving us? It's not if you wish or like if you want to or if you feel like it. He says, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. This is a call for us to make a choice to set the posture of our heart, not to let external circumstances dictate how we respond to things. I mean, the first words in there, I told you to underline them, whatever happens. Good day, bad day, things are going crazy in the world, like it doesn't matter. Whatever is a pretty broad term. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. So what does that mean? Like, what does it look like to conduct ourselves in that manner? Let's start with a clear and simple definition of the gospel. It's the good news of salvation through Christ Jesus. That's it. Like, euangelion is the Greek word. I did it, yay. The good news of salvation through Jesus Christ. So good news, yay, this is awesome. This is a good thing coming your way of salvation. You don't have to live this life forever. You can be saved from the things that are part of your life that God doesn't want to be there for now and forever, like here on earth and for eternity through Jesus Christ. That's the good news. Live your life in a manner worthy of that. So what does it look like in this context? Living our life worthy of the reality of the gospel in your life in a way that gives you a platform to share the gospel with other people. What does it mean? Here's the simplest way to put it. Die to self. That's what conducting ourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ is. Dying to self. This is the journey that the Lord and I have been on the last 3, 4, 5 months. I am not a tattoo person, not because I didn't think there's wrong with them. It's just like I enjoy good visual art, right? It's important to me. And I can't imagine putting something on my body that I wouldn't get sick of looking at. I mean, I look in the mirror every day and I'm like, I'm tired of you. You got to change something. I'm tired of looking at this. But if I were going to get a tattoo for this season of life, it would be die to self. This is what the Lord is teaching me right now, and you just get to get the overflow, I guess. Die to self. It's really the best and only way to live a life worthy of the gospel is to continue every day to make a choice to die to self, to say it's not about me. And this is hard for an Enneagram 8 because everything is about me. At least I want it to be. Die to self. Paul continues to drive this point home if we jump to Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. He says very clearly, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. If there was ever an instruction for believers, for disciples, right, who live in community together, who should make an impact on the world around them, this is it. This is the starting place. If you ever wonder, hey, how does God want me to interact with the world? Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. This would be like the chest piece of my tattoo, right? Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. This is another example of Paul calling us to make the choice to set the posture of our hearts. Value others above yourselves. Simply put, this is it. As believers, this is the starting point. It's consciously choosing to put the needs of others ahead of your own. And this is a complete contradiction to everything you're hearing in the world right now. The world is telling you, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. It's okay to put yourself first. And guys, there's nothing within the word that says that. In fact, the word is so counterproductive to that. It says if you put others first, that is actually the way to be the healthiest version of yourself. Maybe the reason why we're struggling more with depression and anxiety and mental health is because we just focus on ourselves all the time. Maybe that's where the spiritual issue comes in. Maybe if we turn it around and say, how can I serve and help others, where we find value and purpose and fulfillment? I don't know a single person ever that has found value and fulfillment and purpose when they just look at themselves. Everybody who's like, I want to be a part of something bigger than me. That's where I'm going to find value and fulfillment in my life. That's going to help me answer the question, what on earth am I here for? It's never within ourselves. It's always with other people. There's something we should pay close attention to. And this is where I struggle. I'm being honest here. We should value what people actually need, not what we think they need. Typing these words, they hurt because I think I know what everybody needs. I think I can see a clear path for everybody's issues and problems all the time. It's one of the most narcissistic thoughts I have, and I have a lot of them. But taking the time to actually value a person above what I need or what I think they need, and truly hearing what they're saying they need means more than what I think they need. Does that make sense? Taking a step back and saying, it's more about what they actually need than me being right. That's what it looks like. Paul's leading us towards creating a sensitivity towards other people. How many of us walk around like living this closed off, like nobody can get in, and it desensitizes us to other people? Here's the simplest way I can put it. Die to self. This is it. If you're going to be a disciple who is growing, right, which means that you're intersecting with the Great Commission, and the way that we say the Great Commission here, not that it's better than what Jesus said, it just, I like it, is building bridges between people and Jesus. We can't build bridges between people and Jesus if we're living for self. Can't do it. We can fake it, it can look good, but it's not actually changing people's lives. And then Paul brings another conviction towards us. Later in chapter 2, starting in verse 14, he says, do everything, underline that, without grumbling or arguing. Underline that. So that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. In some places it says complaining. How many of us live by this verse? Do everything without grumbling or complaining. Once again, it's talking about taking a posture not defined by our circumstances. Paul says, do everything. We're making decisions before we even get to people to take these stands, to take these postures. Even when it comes to helping and supporting people, our motives matter. So it's like, why does it matter if I grumble or complain, even if it's internal? Nobody will ever know, and it's how I vent. I spent like an hour grumbling and complaining about something yesterday. Now I'm feeling reconvicted about it. Because our motives matter, the whys matter. You know why? Because it doesn't take long for people to see right through impure motives. Think about your own life. Like, have you ever had someone come across and you felt like they were working an angle or they were trying to get to something else? The only reason they're doing something nice for you is to get something or somewhere else? Isn't that the worst? Like, if you want to talk about like just eroding trust between two individuals or between like people and the church, it's when they feel like there's an impure, hidden agenda. Genuine, authentic care makes the greatest difference. Guys, I do not care how many people ever show up to this building. I don't care. If we're not making a genuine, authentic impact on this community, whether it be the Sterling neighborhood or beyond or wherever you're living, through like our pure motives because we love Jesus and we want other people to experience the goodness of God, let's pack it in. This is last Sunday. Congratulations. We failed. Our motives matter. It doesn't take long for people to see right through those things. Here's the simplest way I can put it. Die to self. This is it. This is the essence of what Paul is saying here, is that we have to continue as disciples of Jesus Christ to die to self. So how do we turn those postures that Paul was sharing with us into meaningful help for those people in our lives who are in the season of struggle? Like how does that practically like turn into like, oh, I can help provide a difference? How do we continue to help people who are dealing with stress and anxiety? You ready? Die to self. That's it. We've said those three words about 100 times, and you were like, really? That's it? You sure that you finished the rest of that message? You just didn't pick it up? No, like, because it's that important. It's that big a deal, and it's something that's so fundamental to being a disciple, but it's something that we all struggle with. Every single person. If you don't think you struggle with dying to self, you need to start over, right? Because you've got a pride issue. We could and should apply that truth, that principle to pretty much every issue that we're facing in our life. Are you looking for God to do a work in your marriage? Die to self. If you're looking for some help with your finances, die to self. If you're trying to find clarity on your next step or a relationship in your life, if your kids are going crazy and you're trying to die to self. That is the beginning of every solution that we face. And it's really interesting. The reason that's the beginning of every solution, because the antithesis of that, pride, thinking of self first, the reason that's the original sin. Like when we talk about original sin, we talk about the moment that Eve took that fruit. I don't know if it was an apple. We think it's an apple, but it's probably more like what was that? A durian fruit, like that weird fruit that nobody wants to eat, right? We're going off the rails today. We think of that moment when she disobeyed God as the original sin, but the heart behind that is pride. I think I know better than God. And if you think about every root of every sin you've ever done, it's you think you know better. You knew something was wrong, but you're like, I know better. When you struggle with sexual sin, I know better. When you struggle with telling the truth, I know better. When you struggle with A, B, C, it's because I know better. Selfishness, pride is the original sin. Choosing self is the original sin, and every sin that's ever happened from that has happened flows from choosing self. So in the context of being there for other people who are in the struggle, what does dying to self look like? How do we create a posture that Paul is calling us towards? How do we make that decision? It starts with this. Decide to be supportive, even if you don't understand or agree with an issue. Decide to be supportive of a person, even if you don't agree or understand an issue. The world that we're living in, like if we were to put an adjective on what that word is, and the word adjective came up in our car ride on the way back home because we did Mad Libs and it was great. And so like that word stuck in my head. Like if we were going to put a description on the world right now, we'd say divided. Like even this week with midterm elections and the news cycle has just been taken over with who's going to win control over the Senate and what's going to happen in 2024. And like everybody has chosen a side and some of us are stuck in the middle like all y'all get on my nerves. But our world seems to be divided. What's funny is that we feel this tension more keenly now than maybe in years past, like certainly in my lifetime. But what's interesting is that people have been choosing issues and sides as long as humans have existed. As long as humanity's been around, like there are people who feel this way and people who feel this way and people who feel this. Like this idea of division, it's not new. And I don't know that it's really any worse, but we feel the tension more keenly because we have more access to information. And that causes us to feel like, and the trap that we fall into is that we don't feel like we can really accept a person if they don't agree with us. Thanksgiving's coming. There's going to be a lot of really tense conversations, or they're going to be, more importantly, or more sadly, really, there are going to be people who choose not to spend time with loved ones, with friends and family, because they know that they don't agree on things and they don't want there to be tension. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, we can't sit around a table for an hour together and share a meal once a year because we didn't vote for the same person? Or we disagree with a Supreme Court ruling? Like that, to me, that's just so ludicrous. Especially when faith is involved with that. Like as believers, like if we can't put self aside long enough to just be there for someone, even if we don't agree with the way that they live their life, like that's just not Christ-like at all. We fall into this trap of believing things like that, but I'm telling you right now that is not the truth. You have the ability within you right now, at this very moment, to sit across the table for someone that you have major issues with their worldview and their approach to life, and you can still be their biggest fan and their biggest cheerleader. 100%. If you don't think you can, that's an issue where you've got to continue to die to self. Yeah, can it get awkward? 100%. Do you feel tension because you're like, man, that thought process is way off. That is not aligned with the way things should be, or a traditional look at values, or a more progressive or liberal view. It doesn't matter. Your politics or your value systems, like, have them. Go for it. It's your fundamental right as a human being, right? But you got to separate, right, being a disciple and all that other stuff. They're intertwined, I get that. But what I'm saying is that when you're sitting down with someone who's like, I'm broken, I'm struggling, even if the core of what they're going through is because of a broken worldview, that is not the time to try to fix them. That's the time to be loving and supporting, right? Jesus did it. Look at all the interactions he had with people that were just messed up because of their worldview and the things they decided to do. You know what he said? He said to a woman who had been caught adultery, go, I don't condemn you. Now go and sin no more, right? He didn't give her a 15-point lecture. He didn't send her to like this crazy website. It's difficult, I understand, but we can't hold two opposing things in our hands all at the same time. You can love and support someone and be their biggest fan and their biggest cheerleader, but at the same time, disagree with the way they live their life. And it's not a compromise. You can do both those same things at the same time. Matt, how in the world? How in the world do you expect me to do that? This world is crazy. People believe some crazy things. Here's how. Die to self. It's not about you. It's not about you. That's like the theme song of being a disciple. It's not about you. It's about Jesus. But starting here leads us to take another really important step. Decide to listen to understand a person, not to fix a problem. I struggle hard with this. Ask my loving and caring wife. This is what valuing others above ourselves looks like. And like I said, let me be really honest. This is difficult for me because for the longest time, the only reason I thought in my head, the only reason that people came to me with issues is because they wanted me to do something about it. Like, look, if you're talking to me about this issue you have in your life, that's because you want me to help you solve it. Otherwise, why are you wasting my time? Pretty narcissistic thought. I'm working through it, trying to get better. But in a moment of loving correction, my wife looked at me in one of those moments and said, Matt, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. And I would love to say the light bulb went off and be like, oh, I get it now. It's like, why would you want me to just listen? Like, what are we doing here? It took me some time, #years, to figure out that it's okay for me not to fix everybody's problems. First of all, that's a pretty prideful, narcissistic view of the world. Like, I'm not that smart. And sometimes the best fixing I can do is just give them a soft place for their feelings to land. In case you're wondering, it's not your job to fix people. In fact, you're utterly incapable of fixing people. You know why? Because you're broken too. We all are. We're all messed up in our own ways. The only way that you can be involved in truly helping is by the grace of God through the leading of the Holy Spirit. There are times where God leads us to say things and to give insight and to provide wisdom. Absolutely. I have to believe that. It's kind of my job. But sometimes the Spirit is looking at you and saying, just shut up. Your job is to say nothing and just let them be. Just let them talk and to vent and be there. For some of us, this is a lot to wrap our heads around. It's me. It doesn't make sense. How does this help? How does it help? There's no solutions. There's no next steps. There's no goals involved in any of this, all this talking and wallowing and blubbering that's going on, right? That's the way my mind works. And the Lord lovingly says, die to self. It's not about you. I need to just listen to try to understand what's going on so they feel heard and known and cared for. A solution will come, and it may come through continued conversation, but the posture of my heart, the starting place has to be, it's not my job to fix, it's just to be here. It's just to understand a person, not fix a problem. And if that's not hard enough, here comes the hardest thing. Decide to be patient with people and trust the process. Man, this is so difficult because people are difficult. But this is what doing everything without grumbling and complaining looks like. Grumbling and complaining, or grumbling and arguing, is a direct result of a lack of patience. I've never grumbled or complained while being patient. The reason I grumble and complain is because I lose patience. When it comes to difficult seasons and helping people through them, there's a few fundamental truths, especially when it comes just to people. Here they are. You ready? When it comes to helping people in dark, deep, hurting season, it's always messy, it's never convenient, and it takes longer than you think it should. That's just reality. People are messy. Their struggles never come in a convenient time. I've never sat and said, today's a nice day to help somebody with their problems. Yeah, I would really love it if someone who's depressed comes to me right now. Be great. Never, not once. It's never convenient. I've always had those moments where it's like, I really need to get some things done. And here comes somebody with an issue. And I would love to tell you that as one of your pastors that I've always done a great job of being really patient. I haven't. I've, in my mind, said, I don't have time for this right now. I don't want to deal with this right now. I got other things I want to do. I really want to take a full day off. But Paul reminds me to do everything without grumbling or complaining. Because people are messy. Their issues are never convenient, and it always takes more time than you think it should. Keep in mind that people are people, not projects. The great philosopher of DreamWorks Studios, Shrek, was right. Ogres and onions. People are layered, right? Even the most stripped down, simple person, like the minimalist, they're layered. We all have stuff. We all have things in our life. And the core of the issue is never right at the top, right? It's always peeling things back. And look, I'm not saying we got to go look under a rock for everybody's problem. I'm just saying it's easy for us to look on the outside when it's not emotional to us to say, well, there it is. There's your problem. There it is. It doesn't work that way. What's funny is that when it's our turn, we don't act that way. There's always layers. We have to be patient with the process. We get frustrated with people. Be patient. Trust the process. Keep in mind that the Lord has been patient with you because you're an idiot. So am I. And we've all made mistakes. We've all made left turns where we should have gone right and done things that have been disappointing and that have caused negative consequences. We've all been down that road. And the Lord has been extremely patient with us. So why don't we return the favor when it comes to other people? Sometimes we get frustrated with it because we see this straight path at their feet and you're like, if you would just do this. That's what I say, if you just do this. But guess what? Die to self. It's not about you. It's not about you. We know that any given moment, someone in our life is struggling. It's just math. It's just statistical probability that someone in your life right now is dealing with some stuff, whether it's bubbling at the top or it's below the surface. If you know more than two people, someone's struggling right now. And God has positioned you to be a voice of influence and love and care or just presence in their life. And we've learned this morning together that much of what we can do can bring spirit-filled support and encouragement that starts with setting up the posture of our heart to die to self. If you want to help those people, die to self. But taking a little bit of a turn as we end here that seems a little counterproductive in what we've talked about, I do want to focus on self for just a second. And the reason is because I hope it will motivate you to consider these things. Because the reality is, it's going to be your turn at some point. And maybe you're there now, but life has ebbs and flows, right? There are seasons of struggles and things where everything seems to be okay or whatever, and sometimes we feel like those seasons are really short, and our dark seasons are really long, but we all go through it at some point, and at some point it's going to be your turn. And I think the best way that we can prepare for those seasons is to be what we would want for other people when it's their turn. I saw this lived out for me as someone who had my narcissism keeps coming up today. I'm learning to die to self. I had this really narcissistic view of mental toughness for the longest time in my life because as someone who experienced the pain of a divorced family, the term broken home that was used a long time ago, that it's just terrible to say that now because it's not, but that's a whole other sermon. We can talk about that. We'll do that in 2 weeks. But as someone who kind of lived through what it looked like to have divorced parents and as someone who experienced some version of an abusive father, I grew up in that and some other things that happened in my life that you guys know about, my daughter doesn't know about, so we're not going to talk about it yet. I valued mental toughness because I came through all that stuff and I was pretty well adjusted. One time I sat down with someone that would become a coworker that became on staff at a church that I was working at, and they were there as a board member, and they were a counselor, and they sat down with me during an interview process, and I told them my whole life story, and they're like, wow, how are you not more jacked up? And like, that was a point of pride for me. That's right. I'm not jacked up. I'm pretty well adjusted. And then came a congenital heart defect out of nowhere in 2018, I think it was. That literally, as I'm walking through the kitchen of my house, my heart decides to go crazy, and I think I'm having a heart attack. My heart is going 260 beats per minute, which is a lot, in case you didn't know. And I had to do the whole like shock thing twice, and a week in the hospital, 2 heart procedures, and then literally 2 years. Like if I could go back and live any part of that again, I would do the hospital, I'd do the procedures, but the 2 years of just feeling like at any moment I'm going, literally, this is where my thought process was, I'm going to drop dead, my body is going to betray me, I'm going to leave my family. Every day, multiple times a day for 2 solid years. Well, that'll knock you on your butt as far as mental toughness, because I felt weak and broken. That was one of the seasons where I was struggling. Probably as close to depression as I've ever been. I definitely was dealing with anxiety. One of the things that helped see me through that was my wife. Being patient with me, right? Not grumbling or complaining as I'm grumpy, like not beyond grumpy, like as I'm irritable because I don't know what's going on with my mind. I don't know what's going on with my body. She patiently listened to me and allowed me to feel what I needed to. And she tried to understand. Even when she couldn't understand, she was there. And like, this is like 10% me just praising my wife because I have a microphone and you don't, and I can do that. But it's 90% like that was a time where she lived out all these things that we talked about. And it was my turn to be in need of that. And it's one of the things that helped get me through that season, at least to the point where I am today. It's going to be your turn at some point. So the best way you can help prepare for that season is to be that for someone else, because it builds and fosters relationships, right? And so when it's your turn, you got people that come alongside you that have learned these things and said, I got you. I got you. It's not about me. It's not my job to fix you, right? It's not my job to figure everything out for you. It's my job just to be here. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I think you're wrong in a couple areas. I'm not going to say that because it's not about me. I'm just going to be here. I'm going to support you. Guys, when we say things like community and family here, this is what we're talking about. We're not just talking about hanging out together, sharing meals when people have kids. Like, that's all fun and good, and we should keep doing that. But like, when the metal hits the meat, this is what it's about. Do we care for one another in the most difficult circumstances in life if nobody knows or nobody sees and nobody understands? That's what family is supposed to look like. Can we do that together? Bow your heads and close your eyes. And I know we're over time. Sorry, not sorry. This stuff is really important. Because like, even though like Parkside's been here for a couple years, like we've already been through seasons of life together. And I know some of you are newer. So glad you're here. Some of us have been here for a while, but like we've got this weird spectrum of people's interaction and time with the family. But even at 2 years old, like we've been through some stuff together. Several of us have lost parents. A few of us have lost children during pregnancy, lost jobs, difficult marriage difficulties. Now, I'm thinking about, like, we've been through some stuff together. And you guys have done a good job of being there for one another, but like, in addition to, like, we need to lean into this truth together. Because more stuff's coming. Like, that's just life. And there may be somebody here they're suffering in silence. Like no one knows, but they're struggling. And we need to be there for them in real, meaningful ways. Not just surface level stuff. Real, meaningful ways. And let me just say, like right now, if you're in that season, if you're struggling, let the family know. I don't care if this is your first time here. I don't care if you're watching online and you're somewhere else. Like, let the family know. We're not perfect. You guys know, like, the people who are helping lead this thing, we're not perfect. We're just trying to figure this out together. But I can't promise you, like, there is genuine, authentic care. And we want to be there for you. But you got to let us know. You got to let us know. You can come talk to me. You can come talk to Deborah. You can talk to anyone on our staff, right? You can shoot us an email, hello@parkside.life. I know that's cold, but if that's the way you need to do it in order to get it all out, I don't care. It doesn't matter. We want to be here in whatever season you're in. If you're in a good place, make a decision. That's what Paul was calling us to. Make a decision to die to self, learn that it's not about you, and be there for someone else. You're busy. You've got a lot going on. I get it. But make that decision. You've got time. You'll be amazed at how God will multiply your time when you return it back to Him. Lord, thank you so much for this time together. I know that you know way better than I do, like where everybody's heart is. There are people here who are dealing with loss. I'm one of those people. Some of those people that are dealing with the early stages of parenthood and the stress that comes along with that. People who are stepping into new careers, finishing up a certain season of life, people who are in college and all the stress that comes along with that. There's a lot going on just in the people that are represented in this room. And the enemy wants to tell us that the only way we're going to be able to deal with it is deal with it alone. You can't let anybody else in. The only way you can do it is alone. You don't need anybody. Man, he's a liar, the father of lies. And a big part of your goodness is community to other believers. So Lord, open up our hearts to other people. Let us let people in. And for those of us who are in a good spot, help us to open up our minds and say, like, to fight this battle, that we just need to care about ourselves, that we need to protect that good space that we're in, that margin in our life. We need to open it up and be there for one another. That's what the body of Christ is supposed to be. A group of people that makes an impact on each other and the community they're in for you. That's a life worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So convict our hearts where they need to be convicted and bring about change, Lord. We love you. In your name we pray.
Our hope is that you are inspired and challenged by today's message that Matt gave. I know it can be really easy just to close out this video and go along your day, but I really encourage you to take the time and ask yourself, how can I apply what I learned today in my everyday life? How is God speaking to me through the message that I just heard? We hope to see you again soon, and I hope you have a great week.